Hey, it's Carl. Thank you very much for joining me on this video. In this video, I want to talk about art show tips for the beginner. So if you've never actually ventured out and exhibited your work before in an art show, this video is actually going to give you some really good insights. And there's some really basic but really effective principles to go by. Probably the first one would be to prepare yourself and prepare your equipment. You want to make sure that you've got the right hoists in regards to hanging paintings. If you're doing paintings, if you're doing photography, you want to make sure that you've got your boxes. You want to make sure that you've got all the equipment that you need to be able to display your work properly. In terms of your lighting and generally how you want to actually equip yourself in your booth. Now, if you have to provide your own canopy, of course you will need that. In a lot of cases, there are art shows that will actually already pre-organize that for you, or they'll allocate you a booth, which is fantastic. If you're indoors, that's quite often the case as well. But generally, in terms of your equipment, you want to make sure that you've got the right stands for your work. You want to make sure that you've got tables, all your equipment in regards to if you're using a laptop, if you're taking things like your iPads. So you want to make sure that you've got a list of all the most appropriate equipment that you've got. Even weights if you're outside as well, if you're doing outdoor shows, weights is a critical one. Probably number two would be being able to accept credit cards. I know that when I first started, I actually lost a major sale because I didn't facilitate payments through credit card, and I literally had someone that came into my exhibit stall who was quite in a bit of a rush. So he asked, do you accept credit card? And at that point in time, I didn't accept credit cards, which, thinking back now, it's actually crazy. I mean, who doesn't accept credit cards these days? But I didn't at that time. So effectively, I actually lost a sale of, it was around about $500. Now, he was literally standing there with his credit card. He wanted this particular painting. It was a music painting, and it was about $500. And I did actually mention to him that there was an ATM nearby, and he literally was pushed for time. He did really appreciate my art, took my my business card, of course, but it was never to be heard of again. So essentially I lost a sale. I could have literally made a sale on the spot. So taking credit card payments is really critical. There's a few different facilitators that you can actually go with. Probably one of the most reliable ones is Square. So with Square, they're not the cheapest fees, but they're probably the most less complicated in terms of facilitating or using when you're on site. Square's a really good one. Shopify, so it provides a really good retail payment option. So if you're already on Shopify, you can obviously get that organized so that you can actually use that on site in your exhibit store or outdoor art shows. PayPal here, it's a Bluetooth enabled so that you can actually accept payment within range of mobile devices. So that's really effective as well. Another one is Pay Anywhere. It's a credit card reader. It's got no monthly fees, but you just pay per transaction, which is quite a neat process to use. Also PayFunnels, and that's actually in conjunction with Stripe. It's also a really good online payment facilitator. So make sure you've got one of those as well. There are people that will still pay cash, of course, so you want to be able to make sure that you can actually pay cash if you've got sort of a small float, but generally speaking, the majority of people will pay via credit card, and it's only probably once or twice, maybe at the most, I've actually accepted check payment. If that's the case, then you'll need to be able to facilitate that. But I won't go into too much detail in regards to checks because they're not that common in regards to how people generally pay. Credit cards are the most common. Everyone's pretty much got a credit card on them these days. The next one would be to offer free delivery. You want to be able to provide shipping if somebody buys a piece. Now, depending on the sizes of your work, some pieces can be quite big, so you don't want people walking around for the rest of the day with this piece of art, but you want to be able to let them know that you can provide a shipping option and or delivery. So if they are local, if you actually are doing a local show, you quite often can actually provide a delivery service as well with that. But at the least, provide some shipping options, because you don't want your guest actually, or your customer, carrying their piece of work. And it's just a nice touch as well. They know that they've purchased a piece of art, and of course you're going to present it well through packaging and or delivery, so like a VIP kind of service, which is really nice. And when you actually do deliver it, if you do it personally or have somebody do it for you, at that point you can actually have your little pack like I do. It has things like your certificate of authenticity, which has all the details of the painting and signature on the certificate. They're just nice little touches. You may or may want to do that. It's totally up to you. Probably number 5 is bring an iPad or some form of tab, because you want to show other pieces of your work. I used to have a booklet with photographs in it, but it became a lot more easy if you actually have like an iPad or a laptop is another option, of course. Laptops are a little bit bulkier, but if you are using that for payment facilities, the laptop's handy to have on board. And you also want to show people your website. So I would probably recommend, if you have an opt-in or a way for people to actually opt in their email so that they can actually follow your work, so that it's pretty much automated, so they know that when you have another exhibit, they're going to receive an email. So it allows you to enter their details in while they're on site, because not everybody that comes to the show is going to buy your art. So essentially what you want to be doing is making sure that you're feeding them into your marketing funnel. So having those devices on hand, like your iPads, your tabs and your laptops, are super handy in regards to showcasing your work and helping with your marketing methods as well. Number 6 would be engage with your audience. And this is where the salesmanship comes into place. So you want to be able to gauge. You don't really want to be sort of sitting on the corner or sort of walking around your exhibit stall. You want to be engaging the guests or the customers that actually come into your stall. And more so, you want to put more emphasis on who they are more so than your actual work. And what I've found in my experience is that if you talk more about them, because a lot of people love to talk about themselves, as you probably already know, you can engage them through, who are they, where are they from, what are they interested in, learn more about their story, and that it becomes a real nice welcoming in terms of them starting to respond in regards to wanting to know more about you and your artwork. And of course it will go down to the path of hopefully eventually making a sale out of it. But engage, get up, be enthusiastic, and show genuine interest in the people that actually come into your exhibit stall. Number 7 would be to make sure that you label and describe your work. You also want to have, maybe if you want to consider getting your work framed as well, because framing is a really nice way of presenting your work at art shows. And also you want to title your work, and also perhaps in that description you have a price of your work. What it does is it allows somebody who may be a little bit intimidated in regards to approaching you about your work, it gives them instant information about your piece of work. There are people that are not really going to want to engage in a lot of conversation, but what that does is it kickstarts the conversation in their own mind, and through that it raises a bit more interest through them personally between themselves and your work, and it just provides all the necessary information that they need. So making sure that your work's titled. You may also want to put in there in terms of what actually inspired you to produce the work. That's always a nice touch for people. Generally, a lot of people like to hear sort of a brief story about how you come about producing your work. But at the least, make sure that you've got labels and descriptions on your work, and it just shows a sense of pride in terms of the presentation of your work. Number 8 would be to cater to different price points, because there are variances in terms of what people are prepared to pay for art. I've found in my own experience, if you had little pieces, generally that's a really good entry point. And it's not necessarily just the size, it's also the price point as well. It's a really good way to actually get people to buy from you for the first time. It's less riskier for them, and it also caters really well to impulse buyers. And from there, you may actually find, well, at least I can speak from my own experience, is that from those little pieces, they actually led to more bigger pieces and commission work as well. So you may find yourself, because of it, producing more pieces that are more commission based, or larger pieces, or more expensive items. So you might find yourself visiting business offices and people's homes in regards to setting up commission projects, which is a really good way. So make sure you cater to different price points. As I mentioned, a lot of people that come through are impulse buyers, and you want to keep the impulse price range anywhere from generally from $50 up to $400. You can actually showcase some of your pieces that are more. I have done and been successful, and not always on the actual day, but people, when I have followed up, have purchased more expensive item later on, which is really nice. It's a nice way to sort of end the day after just selling a couple of smaller pieces. Number 9 would be to take names, because not everybody is going to buy a piece of art on the day. So what you want to be doing, as I mentioned before, is feeding your marketing funnel. You want to be taking names. You always want to be feeding your marketing funnel. So a lot of that has to do with your follow-up as well. So if you're taking email addresses, even phone numbers, if people are okay with that, if they want to be contacted in regards to more work that might be available or that's more in line with what they're looking for specifically. But when you get back home as well later on that night or even the next day, make sure that you are reaching out to them immediately, because if you leave it too long, if you leave it like a week later, it kind of dissipates a little bit. People kind of forget about you. Life gets in the way. It's not that they're intentionally forgetting about you, it's that life happens and people get on with their life, and you sort of disappear into the background a little bit more. So you want to be responding quite quickly, and I would recommend that you can do that when you return that night, when you get back home, even you're sending out a brief email, great to meet you, and so forth. I mean, you can word it however you want to, but as long as you're starting the dialogue and keeping the communication going with them and direct them in regards to how they can find out more about when you're exhibiting your work again at a later date, that's going to be really helpful for them. Number 10 would be artist preservation. So you want to be looking after yourself. You want to be making sure that you're well hydrated, that you've got adequate food, that you are, if you are exhibiting outside, you want to make sure that you're catering for the weather and things like that. Potentially there can be quite long days. Now, when I say long days, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not successful, they drag on. There can be long days because you can potentially be meeting and greeting a lot of different people all day long. And so therefore you want to make sure that you're hydrated, you want to make sure that you're eating adequately, and also take it from me, lay off the coffee if you drink coffee, because it's just a hindrance. You constantly need to leave your stall all the time. But that's just my little tip anyway. You are essentially probably the most important thing that you should think about first in regards to getting through a day of exhibiting your work. Not that it's selfish, but you do need to make sure that you are hydrated, that you are looking after yourself, and that you're maintaining a really good energy level, because essentially that's what's going to help in regards to increasing your sales and engaging with the people that come through your store. Now, I feel that I've actually left one out, and it's probably one of the most important ones before you actually go to an event, is to actually pre-promote the event to the people that may already be on your email list. You may even want to get onto your social media and let people know that you will be exhibiting your work on such and such date at such and such location. And you want to also let them know what other events might be happening at the same show that you're at. So for example, there could be, it could be well catered for people that have kids, so that way you're going to draw families to the show. And what you're doing is actually driving a bit of an audience for yourself. And you're allowing people who may have considered looking at your art or may have considered buying your art, and now they're actually going to be able to stand directly in front of it and have a really good look at it. And also it's a nice touch for you to actually, if you haven't met people, which has been the case with me, I've not actually met people face to face, and it was a really good opportunity to do so and to actually stand there and represent my art to them, having not met them before. So make sure that you actually broadcast that message and pre-promote your show as well. Hey, if you liked all these tips, then please give me a thumbs up, and also subscribe to this channel if that's what you do, and I'll catch up with you next time when there's another video. Thanks a lot.